Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. This week we're going to be doing a Bandit engine stand. I've got an engine that needs building and it's going to be much easier having a stand to put it on. So I've got a new tool in the garage, the bandsaw, which you'll see. I've got to do some grinding and welding and some measuring and bits and bobs like that. So stick around and after the intro we'll start making stuff. So I've got my drawing of what we're making today. I've planned it all out so I know what I'm doing. I've got to cut 2 bits for the sides, 2 bits for the ends, and then 4 pieces that it stands up. Obviously you can see the sizes on there. I'm going to be doing mitre cuts, which are at 45 degrees, just to make it look all a bit prettier. So we know what we're cutting. Let's go over to the bandsaw and start getting the metal we need. So I'm really happy I've got this new bandsaw. It's going to come in really handy with some projects in the garage and making stuff, and it's also going to help with a turbo bike. Now I'm just undoing the head of the bandsaw here so I can adjust it back to 0 degrees because the head of the bandsaw pivots, so you can cut from 0 degrees up to 45 degrees. So the first thing we're cutting is the 4 posts that the engine will sit on and the engine mount to. We need 4 of these and they're going to be 120mm long. The first thing I do is mark it with the scribe. And then I get the set square and put a nice straight line across the box section. That way we know where the bandsaw blade needs to be to make the right length cut. When setting the bandsaw blade, you need it ever so slightly to the left of your line to make sure it's the correct length. If you put it directly on the line, the bandsaw blade would cut through and it would probably be a millimetre or so short. So you do it just to the left and it's alright. So I'm going to put the stop on, and then that way once we've made the cut we'll be able to move the steel along against the stop and then it will cut again at 120mm. Now I've sped the bandsaw cut up because it takes about 2 minutes to cut through the box section, and if I showed you every single cut at full speed we'd be here all evening. So before I cut the next piece, I'm just going to double check with a tape measure, make sure it's the correct length, and spot on. So now we'll carry on and we'll cut the rest of the pieces. We need 4 of these, but I won't show you every single cut because again this video could be 2 hours long if I did it all at normal speed and showed you every single cut. So now we've got our square cuts done. I'm going to rotate the head of the bandsaw to 45 degrees so we can cut our miters for the base of the engine stand. Just going to cut the first miter on the tube, so it'll have a miter at both ends. Again, I've sped this cut up because the miter cuts take even longer. They take about 2.5 minutes per cut. I've also set up the stop, so once the cut's finished, it automatically turns the bandsaw off. So we've got our piece we cut off, which should be 45 degrees. We'll double check with a set square, make sure we're happy before we carry on doing any more cuts. And there we have it. It's spot on. So when measuring for the length on the mitered cuts, the best thing to do is measure across the back, because that will be the longest part. So these need to be 480mm along the longest part, and I'll mark them out the same as the straight bits. I use a scribe and a tape measure to start with. Once I know where it is, I use a set square to have a nice straight line. Now I'll turn the tube once more, so the mitered cuts will be in the same direction. I'll also measure it again and mark it with a scribe and then with a set square. But because the cut's at 45 degrees, I also need to put a line across at 45 degrees so I know where the blade's going to cut through. Getting this to line up can be a little bit awkward at first, but I am starting to get the hang of it. So we'll line the blade up again just to the left of the line we've scribed to make sure it cuts at the right length. We'll clamp the vise up and we'll let it cut. You can see the 45 degree line there, and then we've got another 2.5 minute cut. So once we've made the cut, we'll just double check it's the right length, and it's spot on. So what we'll do is we'll use that length to work out where the bandsaw blade needs to be, and then both the pieces will be exactly the same length. I can't use the stock like I used for the shorter pieces because it's just not long enough. I've got a few little mods I want to do to the bandsaw, but for now, when you're not cutting too many pieces, this works just fine. So we've got our 4 upright parts for the stand. We need to drill some 10mm holes in them for the engine bolts to go through. So we're going to use the set square. We're going to set it to 15mm because we want the top side of the hole to be 10mm from the top, and we also want it to be in the centre of the tube. Because the box section is 30mm wide, we use 15 and 15 and mark it up. Now we're going to use the sprung loaded dot punch to make a mark for the drill bit when we drill the holes. So we've moved over to the drill. We're going to start with a pilot hole of 4.5mm before we open the hole out to 10mm. And to make sure the holes line up, I'll drill through one side and then keep on going through to the other side. That way I know my holes line up and they're all square. We won't have any problems with the bolts going through. We'll do this for all 4 of them. So now we've drilled the pilot holes, I'm going to move over to a step drill, which has lots of different sizes on it. I've put a pen mark on there, you might be able to see in red where the 10mm step finishes, just to make sure I don't make the hole too big. The great thing about using the step drill is you get a nice little chamfer, so it makes life easier when you put your bolts in. But because of the size and shape of the step drill, we have to cut the hole with one side, take it out, swap it over and cut the other. But that's okay because they line up. So now, before we start welding, we need to prepare the box section. We need to remove the burr from the bandsaw. We also need to put a small bevel on there where we're going to weld, and we need to clean some of the mill scale off the box section. So we're going to use the trusty angle grinder with a flap disc. It's a bit hard filming in this corner of the garage, but I'll clean a piece up and then show you the difference once it's done. So there we go, after and before. You can see where the burr's been removed. You can see where there's a slight bevel there to make welding easier, and also you can see where I've removed the dull mill scale, because you don't want any contaminants, you want nice clean steel when you're TIG welding. So we'll carry on, get the rest of them done, and it's time to weld. Now we're at my favourite part. It's time to do some welding. So I've got all the metal all prepared, and what I need to do now is lay it out, get it square, tack it together, and then weld it up. So let's crack on, shall we? Now there's a couple of ways to make it square. I can use a set square like this. You can put that in there. That one's square. That was pretty good, so I'm happy with that. Now the other thing I can also do, just to double check, is use my tape measure. And we'll measure it corner to corner, so that's 60.5. And then that one is 60.5. So that is pretty square. But what I'm going to do is make sure this end is square, tack it all up. Then once I've tacked it, I'll spin it round and we'll make sure we get that end square. So we'll just double check. So I'm happy with that one. So I'm just going to tack it up quick. Need a dab of filler on that one. Yep, happy with that. So now we'll come on to this side. Little tack up here. There we go. So pretty happy with that one. Pretty happy with that one. So what I'm going to do now, you spin it round and do the same for this end. Pretty good. So just double check with this one. So I'm happy with that. So something you might notice is how when we weld and tack, it's amazing how it moves the steel around. So let me just make sure this one's square. I think what I might have to do for this one is get a clamp on it. I can always fill the gap. Let's tack it up. There we go. So I'm pretty happy with that. We'll measure it again. .60 and a half. 60 and a half. Perfect. So obviously the metal does pull around a bit. We want to flip it over and start welding from the inside out on opposite corners. It will go out a bit and then it will come back, like the welds pull it back. It seems a bit strange, but it does work out. So right, we'll release that and then we'll do that. And there we go. I've cleaned up a couple of bits of the metal here because we've got the upright bits that the engine mounts go into. So what I've done is I've measured from both directions and found the centre, and then from the centre they're 55mm across from each other. So we'll put the first one on just like that, and then we'll clamp it up. And then we'll get the second one, do the same thing. There we go. So now the gap should be 110mm, which gives you a little bit of room to put the engine in. So what I'm going to do now is just make sure these are square. And then what I'm going to do is make sure my bolts line up, which they do. So I'm nice and happy with that. We'll tack these ones on, and then we'll actually use half the engine to find out where we need these front ones. So let's tack it up, shall we? So I'm happy with that. We'll release the clamps. They look good. And there we go. Just shows you how strong the tacks are, because that's the only thing holding the engine up. So next thing to do is put these ones on. So what we'll do is we'll make sure these are square, we'll tack them up, we'll take the bottom half of the engine off, and then we'll weld everything up. There we go, they're all sorted. Now we can weld the whole thing up. So there we've got it, one engine stand. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's going to be really handy for a new project I've got coming up, because I'm going to have a whole engine to build. So it's going to be nice and practical. A lot of you keep asking about the turbo bike, and I'm going to have a video very soon. The bandsaw you see in today's video, that is going to be really handy and really help me out getting the next part of the turbo bike done. So it won't be long until the next video. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video, a little bit different from the other ones. If you've liked the video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get a notification every time we do an upload. And if you like this video, you might like this one over here, or you can check out one of our other project videos down in the corner. So until next time, we'll see you later.